I never imagined that my brother Jake would be the one to cause a scene at a wedding, especially not his ex's. But here we were, standing in the middle of Amy's lavish wedding reception, surrounded by stunned guests and clinking champagne, glasses, watching my brother freeze like a deer in headlights as Amy and her new husband walked by, hand in hand. The silence was deafening. Jake had been invited out of courtesy, or maybe guilt, and to be fair, he'd insisted he was okay with it, claimed he had moved on. He even brought a date, though she spent most of the evening glued to her phone, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. But the moment Amy walked past us, radiant in her dress, smiling up at her husband with stars in her eyes, something broke in Jake. He stood there, completely still, staring at them like his world was ending all over again. And then, just as they reached the dance floor for their first dance, he dropped his glass. It shattered, loud enough for the entire room to hear. Everyone turned. Amy looked over her shoulder. Her smile faltered. Jake's face went pale. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to speak. But he didn't. He just turned and walked out. I followed him. He didn't say anything until we were in the parking lot, and even then, it wasn't much. "She looks happy," he whispered, barely audible. I thought I was okay. My heart cracked. Jake had spent the last 2 years convincing everyone, including himself, that he was over Amy, that her leaving him hadn't gutted him, that he was better off without her. But this moment proved otherwise. We sat in my car for a while, neither of us saying anything. The air was thick with the unspoken truth. Jake wasn't okay, not even close. That moment at the wedding became the spark that ignited everything that came next. Because what none of us realized, not even Jake, was that he had been drifting for years. And the wedding wasn't just about Amy. It was about everything he had lost. His sense of direction, his passion, his peace. Jake had been going through the motions since his corporate job chewed him up and spat him out. He never talked about it. Not really, he just kept smiling, kept pretending, kept showing up to family dinners with the right stories, the right jokes. But when Amy walked past him at that wedding, it all crumbled. And maybe it needed to. The next morning, Jake showed up at my place with 2 coffees and a look I hadn't seen on him in a long time. Vulnerability. "I need to figure out who I am again," he said softly. "And I don't think I can do it alone." I wasn't expecting it. Jake and I had grown distant over the years. Our childhood closeness had faded into polite sibling check-ins. But in that moment, none of that mattered. I just nodded. "You're not alone," I told him. We spent hours talking that day. About everything. His job, his past, his regrets. He admitted he'd been volunteering at a local community centre, but hadn't told anyone, afraid it would seem like a failure compared to his old 6-figure tech job. "It's the only thing that makes me feel useful," he confessed. "Helping the older folks set up their emails, teaching basic internet safety. It's small, but they're so grateful. It makes me feel human." That was the word that stuck with me. Human. Because the Jake who used to skip family dinners for work calls wasn't human. He was a ghost chasing status. And now, for the first time in years, he was real again. We made a pact that day, to be honest with each other, to rebuild our relationship, to stop pretending. Jake started coming over every Sunday for brunch. Sometimes we just talked. Sometimes we cooked. One day, he helped me reorganize the entire back pantry of my bakery, and we ended up throwing flour at each other like we were kids again. It was healing, for both of us, but not everyone was ready to accept the new Jake, especially not Mom. It started subtly, comments at dinner. "So, have you heard back from any of your old contacts?" Jake would smile politely, then talk about his volunteer work instead. I could see the disappointment in Mom's eyes every time he dodged her hint. After one dinner, she pulled me aside. The living room was filled with family photos, Jake's graduation, his college acceptance, his first job offer framed, like trophies. Emma, she said gently, don't you think you should encourage Jake to get back into the corporate world? All this bakery talk and community center stuff, it's not suitable for someone of his caliber. I was stunned. Mum, I said, trying to stay calm. Jake's finally happy. Isn't that what matters? She shook her head, staring at a picture of Jake in his old tailored suit. But he had such a promising future. All those opportunities. I tried to explain that Jake was finding fulfillment in his new path, that he was healing, growing, but she wasn't ready to hear it, and that terrified me, because Jake and I had only just begun to rebuild, and now our parents, especially Mom, were threatening to pull it all apart. Over the next few weeks, it only got worse. Mom started emailing Jake links to job openings, dropping names of corporate connections she could call on his behalf. At a family cookout, Jake was glowing as he told us about helping a group of seniors set up email accounts. One elderly woman had cried after seeing a photo of her great-grandkids for the first time. But instead of celebrating with him, Mom just sighed. That's fine, honey. But have you considered using your skills for something more substantial? I heard the city's tech firm is hiring. The light in Jake's eyes dimmed. I felt something rise up in me I hadn't felt since childhood. Fury. But before I could speak, Dad, usually quiet, stepped in. Linda, he said gently but firmly, I think what Jake is doing is very meaningful. He's making a difference. It was the first time I'd seen Dad openly disagree with Mom about Jake. The tension in the room was thick. Mom didn't respond. Jake handled it with grace, as always. I appreciate your concern, Mom, but I'm not going back to that life. Not right now. But I could see it wearing on him, the constant pressure, the silent judgment. Dad was more accepting, but even he didn't always speak up when Mum started in on Jake. And just like that, our progress as a family started to crack again. Jake and I had grown stronger, but our parents were stuck in the past, and we didn't know how to bring them forward with us. Things came to a head one rainy Saturday afternoon. Jake had shown up at my bakery, soaked to the bone, but smiling, holding 2 coffees and a bag of my favorite bagels. He sat at the corner table like he always did, telling me about a new tech class he was teaching at the center. His face lit up as he described helping an elderly veteran set up a Zoom call with his grandkids. But I could see the weight behind his smile. Later, as we closed the shop, he turned to me and asked quietly, Do you think Mom will ever be proud of me again? I felt my throat tighten, because deep down I knew he was serious. We talked for hours that night, about Mom, about Dad, about how Jake felt like he'd disappointed them, simply by choosing happiness over ambition. And that's when we decided we needed to talk, really talk, to all of them. We reached out to Mum and Dad, asking if they'd be willing to meet us for a family discussion, neutral territory, after hours, at my bakery. We also asked Nana Rose to come. Nana Rose was the heart of our family, wise, patient, and not afraid to speak truth when needed. That evening, I was a mess of nerves. I stress-baked for hours, cookies, muffins, even a tray of cinnamon rolls Jake used to beg for as a kid. When they all arrived, the bakery smelled like home. Mom walked in stiffly. Dad looked uneasy. Nana Rose gave me a knowing smile and settled quietly into a seat. Jake spoke first. His voice was calm, but I could see the emotion welling behind his eyes. I want to start by saying, I know I haven't made things easy. I know leaving my job, leaving Amy, it didn't make sense to a lot of people. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. I'm helping people. I'm sleeping at night. I'm not lost anymore. He paused, looking directly at our parents. I'm not asking for praise. I just want you to see me, as I am now, not who I used to be. I stepped in next. I've never been prouder of Jake, I said. He's grown so much. He's not just my brother. He's my friend again. And it hurts to see him constantly questioned for choosing a life that makes him whole. Mum's eyes were already glistening. She shook her head slowly. I don't understand, she whispered. We sacrificed so much to give you those opportunities. We worked so hard, and you had such a bright path ahead of you. That's when Nana Rose leaned forward, her voice quiet but firm. Linda, let me ask you something. What matters more to you, Jake's resume or Jake's happiness? The question hung in the air. Mom didn't answer right away. Then, to all of our surprise, she broke down in tears. I was proud, she said through sobs. I was so proud of everything he achieved. It made me feel like we'd finally made it, that all our struggles were worth it. Jake gently took her hand. I know, Mom, and I was proud too, but I was miserable. I was drowning. I couldn't tell anyone because I didn't want to disappoint you. I just wanted you to have everything I didn't, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't want you to struggle like we did. Nana Rose placed a hand on her shoulder. We all want better for our kids, but better doesn't always mean bigger. Sometimes it just means peaceful, whole, free. It was the turning point. Dad finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. I've been proud of you this whole time, Jake. I just didn't say it enough. I let your mother's expectations shape my silence, and I regret that deeply. What followed was one of the most honest conversations we'd ever had as a family. We talked about fear, about expectations, about what success really means. Mum admitted she had placed too much of her self-worth in Jake's achievements, that she felt like if he wasn't succeeding outwardly, then somehow she had failed. But slowly, she began to see, to really understand. We made promises to each other that night, that we'd define success as joy, not income, that we'd check in with our hearts, not just our calendars, that we'd speak honestly, even when it's hard, and most importantly, that we'd support each other's journeys, no matter where they led. As we cleaned up, Mum lingered at the counter, eyeing the tray of cookies I had made. These are wonderful, she said softly. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate your talent. Emma, would you be willing to teach me how to bake these sometime? That simple request broke something open in me. Yes, I said, barely holding back tears. Of course, in the weeks that followed, something shifted. Mum stopped sending Jake job postings. She even asked him questions about his volunteer work, and listened. Last week, she shocked us all by asking him to teach her how to use Google Drive. Jake looked like he might cry. Dad's also become more vocal in his support. He's been helping me brainstorm expansion ideas for the bakery, and he's even talked to Jake about starting his own small tech consulting business for seniors and non-profits. Jake and I, we're better than ever. Our Sunday brunches have become sacred. Last week, Jake tried baking a pie from Nana Rose's old recipe. The crust was tough and the filling was runny, but we laughed like kids while eating it anyway. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that's all we've ever wanted. Yes, there are still moments. Mum will occasionally slip into old patterns. Dad will hesitate before speaking up. But now, we face those moments head on. We talk, we listen, we grow. All because Jake dropped a glass at a wedding. Funny how life works, isn't it? Sometimes, it takes a public disaster to reveal private truths. Jake's embarrassing moment didn't ruin anything. It saved everything. It brought my brother back. It brought our family forward, and for that, I'll always be grateful. If this story touched your heart, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. And if you've ever found unexpected healing in the wake of something painful, let us know in the comments. Your story might just help someone else find peace.